Hi guys. I have a little bit of a sad video to tell today. Now, when I did my unboxings, my clothing unboxings, I usually tried to do it out of reach of the animals, but every now and then an animal would cross through the room, and I think you saw the dog Moose a couple of times. You may have also seen a gray cat walk by. That was Assumpta. I called her the important cat because we have other cats, but she was my special girl. And she died on August 8th, and I wanted to kind of tell you her story. Now, that's Moose in the background squeaking his toy because, you know, life goes on. We had a problem with mice in the house. Now, I'd had a cat in college. Cats are funny with me because some of them I'll be allergic to and other ones don't bother me. So I always have to kind of test drive a cat to make sure it's not one of the ones that'll make my eyes itch and swell. But the cat I'd had in college had passed away, and it had been a number of years. We didn't have another cat. Moose? Hold on a second.
Moose, now you're being quiet. You were just rolling and growling right when I was recording. Yeah, you got all your ducks? Looks like you did them in, huh? Yeah.
Okay, try that again a little bit. Anyway, we had a problem with mice in the house, and I don't mean pet mice, because at one point in time, Thomas had pet mice in a tank. These were not the pet mice. These were wild mice, and we were infested. And I bought live traps to try to catch them, and I drove them far away in a field and let them go, where they probably were owl food, but, you know, they had a fighting chance. It didn't work. I tried repellents, it didn't work. And finally I said, you know, getting a cat, I hate cats playing with mice and then killing them. But the fact is, when they do it to a couple of mice, the rest of the mice go find a different place to live because they know a predator's here. So I said, you know what, there's a shelter, animal shelter near us that's really overcrowded. I'm going to go see if I can foster a cat. Sounds like a good solution. So I went over there, and they said, well, we have a cat, but this cat needs serious socialization. It's a very nasty cat. All it does is growl and yowl. It doesn't like people. It doesn't like anything. We're not sure you should take that cat. I said, let me see the cat. So, love a challenge. So they took us down in the basement. It was filled with cat carriers. I guess they call them kennels, but they're like large cat carriers stuffed with cats, stacked on top of each other. There were so many animals in the shelter. It was very sad. If you need a cat, go to a shelter, please. And they took us to the cage. They said, it's a big gray male named Aiden. And they opened the door, because people were afraid to open the door for this cat. And this cat jumped out into my arms, right onto my shoulder, and began kneading. You know how cats, they make muffins, we say. They start kneading when they're happy. And it was purring and purring. And the staff workers looked shocked. And I said, this is the cat. They said, but it's not a nice cat. And I'm like, this cat has selected me, because, you know, cats pick you, you don't pick them. So we took her home. Yes, her, the 15-year-old daughter, who certainly had spent years in 4-H raising livestock, didn't know how to tell the difference between boy animals and girl animals. And as we're at the counter filling out the paperwork for this cat, she looks under the tail and said, you sure this is a male? And they said, yes, it's in the paperwork. She goes, this is not a male. And they looked and said, oh, it's a female. And then we realized her belly had been shaved probably a couple of months earlier because she had been spayed. And they didn't know. Either they mixed the paperwork up or they just hadn't looked close enough once this cat came in. She did come in from a different shelter. And so we brought her home. She spent about 2 hours in my closet under the stairs. And then she came out, and she was the best cat. Thomas was on the young side of 5 when we got her. My 6'1" son, who is now 20 years old and in college, he was 5 years old when we got her. And she was an adult when we got her. They guessed, now normally when you get a mature adult that doesn't show signs of aging, they tell you it's 2. Could be anywhere between 2 and 4. They can't tell. It's an adult cat that's not old yet. So she was about 2. Born 2001, she might have been born 2000, around there. She was so tolerant of Thomas. Now, I don't think it's cute when a little kid goes and runs up and pulls on an animal. That's not nice to the animal, and if the child gets scratched, then the child will learn. You don't do that to an animal. So it's not like I would allow Thomas to torture this cat, but he was 5 years old, and he loved her, and he wanted to pet her and pick her up. And she was so tolerant. She was amazingly tolerant of this child. And they grew up to be buddies. She was good buddies with my oldest son, too. My oldest son is now 33, so he was a teenager at this time. But they were really good buddies. And Annie, my oldest girl, who was 15 when we picked her out, she was terrible insomniac. And she would walk down in the middle of the night and play with this cat, who was thrilled somebody else was up at 2 in the morning. So they were good buddies, too. Her name, Assumpta, came because Annie wanted to give her that name. I wanted to call her Martha. Annie wanted to call her Assumpta. And I said, why? And she said, well, it's a good Catholic name. That wasn't the truth. Actually, she was a fan of a British TV show called Ballykiss Angel. And there was a character who was a barmaid named Assumpta. And she wanted to name the cat after that character. But she was afraid if she said that to me, I would say no. So she said, oh, she needs a good Catholic name, Assumpta. So I said, okay. And she became Assumpta. And Annie began calling her Pumpita as a nickname. And then Pumpta, and then Pumpy. So she had all those names, Assumpta. She was the most social cat. Not only was she gentle, she was extremely social. We did not have to socialize her. She was big gray cat, very quiet, 12 pounds, very quiet, would follow you from room to room if she wanted attention, and she'd just sit there with you. So we'd all sit around the dinner table, and if there was an empty seat there, we'd look over, and there was the cat sitting there with her head right above the ledge of the table, just sitting there with us, because the entire pride of lions was sitting around the table, and she was going to join us. So much to my husband's horror, I took a little saucer, and I put some food in it and put it next to her. She'd reach her paw up and take food off with her paw and put it in her mouth. It was hysterical. And my husband eventually got used to living with a crazy cat lady, you know. So she was dear to us. At night, we would gather together in the living room for prayer time. We're Catholic, we said the rosary. And she would walk in and sit on the couch and sit with us until just when it ended, and then she'd get up and get off the couch and leave. And if we didn't get in there on time, she would come into the room where we were, and then we would hear a meow. Meow. Hello? And it would get louder if we didn't pay attention. It was obviously time to go in and say the rosary. So we go in and sit down, and if we didn't start the prayer right away, it's a very rhythmic prayer. It has a rhythm to it, so she knew it. And if we didn't start it, she would get off the couch and stare at us until we started it. And again, just as we came to the end, she'd get off the couch and she'd leave. Now, as she got older, she developed kidney failure, which sounds terrible because in a person, it is terrible. In a human person, it's terrible. But in cats, it's normal. It's a normal part of aging. Starting in middle age, sometimes even younger, they begin to lose kidney function. And it's a very, very slow process. And by the time you actually start to see it, it's pretty advanced. But they can still go on a special kidney diet. They can go for years. So we got her diagnosed. I had 2 daughters at the time working for the vet, which is very helpful. And we had her diagnosed, and she was put on a special kidney food. And she did fine. Now, she had lost weight. She was down to 7 pounds. I thought, this is it. The cat is dying. And both daughters said, no, Mom, this is the kidney cat. This cat will go on looking awful, but being fine, and go on for years, which is exactly what happened. She kind of looked like an old lady. Now, the other thing that happened with the kidney disease is she got a lot hungrier and thirstier. So we always had a big bowl of fresh water down, and she was hungry all the time, which meant that she got more vocal, because now she wanted food. So this cat that had been very quiet would get vocal because she would meow at you like, where's the food? And she was a ruthless beggar. When my Mary came home with Moose one day, the dog, the 2 of them, not only did they get along, they became a begging team. It was kind of like a pickpocket team where one of them would distract you and the other one would steal the food. Honestly, they did that. They were quite the team. And we loved them. Now, we ended up with 3 other cats, mainly because my eldest daughter had another cat. She was now in her middle 20s. My future son-in-law had a cat. They got married and moved to New Zealand, and I got both their cats. And then within the past year, I got a call from one of the 4-H leaders where my kids used to be in 4-H, at the farm where they kept their animals, saying, we have a barn cat that needs a home. We knew this cat. He was very affectionate, and he was probably going to not make it if somebody didn't take him. So we took him in. So now I had 4 cats, but only 1 cat was the important cat. Thomas was so afraid she would die while he was at school. But this summer, he's home from school, and she has a sudden decline, especially at the end of July. We had her blood work done. You check the levels for their kidneys. We had her blood work done end of June, and it was actually, I thought she was getting worse, and the vet said, no, it's pretty much the same it's been. It's not much worse. It might help her because she's getting a little dehydrated to get some subcutaneous fluids, which I did at the vet. It's a pretty simple process. And it did help. She perked up again. She was fine. So we were giving her some fluids. But then at the end of July, she had a big decline. And I knew it was a matter of time. So my concern was keeping her comfortable. Their cats don't usually do well with pain medication. Note, never give your animals human pain medication. It can kill them. They're not humans. They have a different biology. But I know cats are especially difficult with pain relief. But I called the vet and they said, well, there is something you can give that's a narcotic. The only downside of narcotic is it depresses the respiratory system, so it could cause her to expire, you know, from depressed respiration. I'm like, this cat is expiring. She has days. It's, you know, I'm not trying to take her out, but I know she's going to go out, so I want her pain relieved. So we got this medication that was absorbed in the mucous membranes of the mouth, and you just kind of stuck it right there, and she absorbed it. And it really, I don't know that she was in pain, but I was just assuming this is the end of kidney failure. She probably has some pain. And she would just be very relaxed, and she would sit with Thomas. And she would sleep, and he petted her. And that last day, we knew this was it. He came downstairs, which was her lair. Her favorite spot was behind the couch. And he laid on the floor with his pillow, and she laid next to him, and they just stayed together. I came down in the morning, and she's laying next to him, and I said, is she dead? He goes, no, but she doesn't have long. Every time we thought it was the end, she would get up and look around and look at us and lay back down again. But then she wanted to go behind the couch, and I knew what that meant. And she went behind the couch. Her tail and rear were sticking out from behind the couch, but she was there. And we sat with her, and I said, you know what, Thomas, let's say the rosary. Because that was what she always did. She loved to be with people when they were saying it. She loved the rhythm of it. So we just pulled out our rosaries and started to say it. And when we got near the end, she died. We left her there for a couple of minutes. We actually sat with her to make sure that she was really expired. And Thomas picked her up and he set her on the dining room table and wrapped a blanket around her, kept her face open just in case we were wrong, but no, she started to get stiff. We knew this was it. He went in the backyard, dug a hole. I laughed at one point because she used to always try to jump up on the dining room table. And I said, look, she's still getting on the dining room table. But he dug a big hole under her favorite tree outside where she used to sit. As she got old and she wanted just to sit outside, she would sit under this tree. And we put her in a little box and put her under there. And Thomas planted flowers. I was very glad Thomas was home on break when this happened. Oh, that's it. And our cat is, she's gone now, but she died well. And I was so glad. I was questioning myself at the end about having her put down. And Thomas said, no, she's scared in that place. She'll be around people she doesn't know. She'll be stressed. I mean, death's nasty no matter how it happens. But she said, let her die here. And I am so very glad we did. But there's a hole in my heart. We had her for 15, and as I said, she was 2 or 3 when we got her. So she was an old cat. She had been a big cat, and she had a good life with us. And now we have 3 other cats walking around, and Moose. You know, Moose has been really upset since she died. He keeps looking for her, which is really sad too. But you know, like I said, life goes on. So I will see you hopefully next time with a happier video. Bye-bye.